jerky, but we don't do beef.
I say, here we go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you start talking about beef jerky. Well, that's going to stay in. Anyway, so we were conversing about the dried fruit and beef jerky, but that's not the point of what we're doing here. We just finished watching All In last night. We usually sleep in between reviews because most of the time we watch it till butt-ass early in the morning. But, so I woke up in a hideous mood today, so I waited a little bit longer to do this because I wanted to grind nails between my teeth, and I figured if I should do a proper burial, not an extremely angry burial, because it wasn't the show that made me mad. So, anyway, we watched the All In, which is the all wrestler pay-per-view. They booked it, ran it, did it all themselves between Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks. If it weren't for 2 matches, I would say it was probably the best pay-per-view I've seen this year. Unfortunately, I cannot erase those from my mind, no matter how much I might want to. So I think it's right on par with most shows. If you just skip those 2 matches, it'll be awesome. Or if you like stupid comedy wrestling, then I guess you're okay with that. And I like stupid comedy wrestling when it's separated from actual real wrestling, but when I watch a bunch of penises going up and down the ramp and then I watch a serious wrestling match, it kind of takes a little of the fun out of it for me. And anytime I see Joey Ryan, it also takes the fun out of it for me. A greasy, disgusting, garbage human being that he is. Now, let's talk about the show. So what did you think of, before we go on, what did you think?
I liked it. I really enjoyed it. Even the Dick Brigade was okay.
No,
but
it wasn't.
The problem is, it's serious wrestling we're watching. If it's Doomsday Wrestling, well then yeah.
If it was outside of the general scope of serious wrestling,
Exactly.
I'm okay with it. But mixing it together doesn't make any sense. It's like a movie that just is really super serious. Like if The Godfather, halfway through, Bugs Bunny showed up or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, so the announcing was the worst part of the show other than those 2 matches. We had Don Callis, Ian Riccaboni, and somebody named Excalibur.
Right.
And unfortunately, I don't think they pulled it. Actually, if they pulled him out of a lake, he might have been a better announcer. But he was really over the top and awful, and the other 2 were just kind of dull. Actually, when the guest would come and talk at the table, I was happy because it meant I didn't have to listen to the other 3 as much. I think Don Callis was the best because occasionally he'd say something wildly inappropriate that I would at least giggle at, but everybody else is pretty awful. So the show starts, we're watching the pre-show, with Cody and the Young Bucks coming out, messing around.
Yeah.
Oh, you tell them where it is.
Okay, so it's in Chicago, Illinois, in the Sears Center.
Yeah. Now back to what I was saying. Cody and the Bucks screwing around. They give some free stuff out. They have Animal of the Road Warriors come out on his motorcycle for no apparent reason, which is fine. Justin Roberts is the ring announcer. He's the old guy from WWE who would announce something like this. John Cena! Not one of my favorites, if you couldn't tell from that rousing round of support I just gave him. That said, our first match was an awesome lead-in. The Kazarian from The Addiction and Scorpio Sky versus the Briscoe brothers, who are also the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions. I've never seen the Briscoes booed before, or at least not to this degree. Obviously, I haven't watched Ring of Honor in a while, so I'm assuming they turned into vicious heels. But my God, the crowd was behind Kaz and Scorpio Sky. I've never seen Scorpio Sky as a wrestler. I've heard of him. I don't think you've seen him either, right? No. But I gotta say, Kazarian was really awesome in this match. Better than I've ever seen him.
Lean and mean.
Not just that. I mean, he was doing all kinds of cool moves. 2-on-1. He was winning 2-on-1. All kinds of good stuff. Scorpio Sky held his own. The Briscoes are always awesome, and they were playing. Mark was playing it straighter than I've ever seen him.
True. And Jay, he was even more terrifying than usual.
And yeah.
Intense.
So it was lots of action, lots of back and forth. And at the end was pretty cool. Kaz was set up to take the Doomsday device, but he caught Mark in midair and gave him a power slam, and then cradled him for the pin while Scorpio Sky held off Jay Briscoe for a few seconds. It was a really good start to the show, and I imagine it was on the pre-show just to try to draw a few more pay-per-view buys before it went on the air officially. What do you got to say about this match?
Double Dragon Sleeper.
Double Dragon Sleeper. That sounds like a sequel to a video game.
Could be, but in this case it was just how they did it in the ring. They were so sharp with it. It was unbelievable. It
was Kaz and Scorpio that had it on the Briscoes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They did it smooth and quick. It was just awesome. That's what when you said they drug out things that you hadn't seen before, I wanted to make sure that was mentioned because I thought it was really cool.
Well, I didn't say it's things I hadn't seen before. Just that they were really good, really fast, and it had enough selling to be good, but a lot of crazy, high-flying stuff. Just what you'd want from an opener. Mm-hmm. Best opener I've seen on any event we've watched this year.
Awesome match. A hell of an opener. So it makes you wonder when you first watch it, is the rest going to live up to it?
And most of them were pretty good.
There's one or two that were just...
Yeah, we're going to bury a couple of them. If you don't, I certainly am going to.
Absolutely.
So the next, after the match, we got a rather dull Kenny Omega promo about his match with Pentagon later in the evening. Nothing to see here. He was his usual flat self. Then we got the over-budget 30-man Battle Royal, which is for a Ring of Honor World Title match later in the evening. If you've seen Battle Royals before, you know it's generally a giant clusterfuck, but also tends to be pretty entertaining. And this is no different here. So Dalton Castle was on commentary, and he was moderately inappropriate, which was probably made it the best commentary of the evening. And the fans were chanting his name.
He's awesome.
While he's sitting on commentary. My favorite part of this match was when Hurricane, that's Hurricane Helms from the 90s and 2000s era WWE, chokeslam both Cage and Punishment Martinez. Mm-hmm. These two giant men and little bitty Hurricane picks him up for a chokeslam. After all these years, he finally hits his chokeslam on somebody.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah. So, the end of the match, it looked like Bully had won, but the man he had powerbombed through a table at the beginning of the match came back into the ring and threw him out while he was celebrating. And that man was Flip Gordon dressed up like a generic luchador. We're going to talk about Flip Gordon later in the match. Do you have any other highlights of this that I missed out on? Because there was a whole lot of stuff that happened in this match.
The only thing I had to comment on was you didn't mention Castle's outfit.
Castle had an incredible suit on. Talk about it.
It was a black background with all kinds of flamboyant colors, lots of purple. Some of it had peacock feathers on it. He was just really sharp. His hair was styled, and just his usual immaculate self.
Didn't have the boys though.
No, darn, I missed the boys. He did make a couple of colorful comments about what was going on in the match.
Yes.
He made one particular one that just cracked me up. He said that you didn't want that person touching you because you didn't know where those hands had been.
I thought he said because you knew where those hands had been.
No, he said because you don't know where those hands had been.
Well, that's still funny, but not as funny as the other.
Yeah, it's the way he says things. He's
I would try to imitate him, but it would fail.
Oh, he's just awesome.
So that was the end of the pre-show, which is a pretty fun 2 matches. It's a much better pre-show than I'm accustomed to from watching the WWE pre-shows, which generally tend to be a little more dull. Mm-hmm. And they feel more choreographed, whereas this felt
more scripted, and you can tell they are.
Exactly.
These guys were having a blast and just having fun and really enjoying themselves, and you could just tell that they were really into it.
So with that over, we began the main show, where we had I don't know who it was, but she utterly butchered the national anthem, which is normally a beautiful song, but this sounded like a cat being slowly stretched to death.
Yep.
So, yeah, please, anyone singing the national anthem, please sing it as it was initially intended, because generally changing it makes it sound absolutely wretched.
Don't jazz it up. Don't show off your voice.
She missed the very first note of the song. I've never heard anyone miss the first note. That takes impressive lack of skill. I have even money that you could get a trained baboon to sing better than that. I don't know. Pretty much anything. Parrot. Maybe you could squeeze the cat and it would sound better.
Just run over its tail with the darn rocking chair. That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll work. Anyway, I've gone on too long about this because, again, did I mention I'm in a wonderful mood?
Yep.
Yes. So let's go on to the real show. So the very first match was someone called MJF versus Matt Cross. I've never seen either of these guys. MJF was doing the full old school heel, running, eye gouging, everything behind the ref's back, constantly taunting the crowd. So of course I immediately liked him. Randy hit all his moves and he looked fine too. Matt Cross, to best describe him, he looks like a man in his late 50s, but he moves like a man in his early 20s. Short, stocky, great shape, extremely athletic, but I can't. He looks like he's been wrestling for 100 years, although they said he was 20 years? 20-year career. Yeah, he was really good, though. And he was doing a lot of the high-flying and the impressive moves, while MJF would occasionally counter them and taunt everyone and just generally be a jerk. And then the part I had to comment about was that where Cross hit him with, I think it was a clothesline, and he went down and did the Three Stooges curly with the legs around the ring. That was glorious. All of one person might actually get that reference.
Probably.
Maybe not even that. I'm old. So
go with the Spinneroonie.
I'd rather not. But in the end, Matt Cross won with the shooting star press. What do you think? What did you think about this match?
Honestly, I didn't really enjoy it because I thought, I didn't know either one of them that well. They wrestled okay. I just didn't have anything invested in the match.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
I will say that I did enjoy the mocking that he did of Matt Cross.
Trash talking, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's my time, old man.
That's it.
Yes,
Not yours, mine.
Yes.
Okay.
At any rate, the next we had a Magnus promo, and he's going by his real name, which is Nick Aldis. He's the NWA Heavyweight Champion now, and he did an interview with old announcing legend Sean Mooney, who many of you might remember from the the 90s, and I think he was even in the 80s with WWE, when it was WWF.
Right.
Before the Panda Bears attacked. But then we got an interesting one.
Really?
Yeah, Christopher Daniels, the Fallen Angels he's going as once again, versus Stephen Amell, who, for those of you who are wrestling fans only, is the arrow off of the superhero show. Mm-hmm. You know the superhero show. Tell what's the arrow about?
It's about a rich guy who tries to make up for all his past mistakes. He becomes a superhero, so he wears a mask in his hometown, trying to make up for it and get rid of the corruption in his city. There
you go. So in this, he is apparently a huge wrestling fan, and this was his third career match. Or at least that's what the announcers say. But I know he's wrestled in WWE before, and I think he did have a Ring of Honor match as well. Mm-hmm. And this is was a lot of Ring of Honor guys, but also from several companies that were other than that, including New Japan and TNA, and then there were some that I think were just independents that had not wrestled on any of those shows. But they put the right person with them in Christopher Daniels, because Daniels has been wrestling for 25 years. Excuse me. See, there's a professionalism. I got to add belching to our broadcast. So I would not have been able to tell that Amell was not. I would have guessed he was a wrestler with a few years of wrestling experience if I didn't know who he actually was. There were a few sloppy things he did, but overall he looked pretty good out there. And Daniels led him through the match as best he could. So the finale of it came when Daniels got knocked off the apron and landed on a table, and he was sitting there, and Amell leapt from the top turnbuckle outside of the ring to try to elbow drop him to the table, and Daniels moved out of the way at the last minute. It went on for another minute after that. That was basically the... and the crowd made a broken arrow chant, which was pretty great. The ref tossed them both back in the ring, and after, 2 minutes, mm-hmm. Daniels hit the best moonsault ever for the win. So, any comments? I missed out on anything in that one?
Only that Amell did his best to aggravate Daniels, like when he gave him the double bird.
Oh, well, yeah.
Mocking with him. It was pretty good. I mean, I give the guy kudos for being able to take some of the bumps he took, and he did look credible. He is a very athletic man to begin with, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a good wrestler.
Okay.
But he was good. He was very entertaining. The match was great.
I'm having to drag this out of you today.
Okay, I'll stop.
If I stop, just add something.
Got it.
That's I'm otherwise I'm just gonna babble on like a lunatic and bore everybody even worse.
All right, well, let's move on.
Yeah, let's go. All right. So we had a fatal 4-way match between the women's wrestlers. So we had 3 women's wrestlers and then one I don't know what.
Yeah.
She was a woman, but I don't know if she was a wrestler. I've seen a lot worse. Yeah.
God.
So we had Tessa Blanchard, Madison Rain, Britt. What was her last name?
Baker.
Baker. I did not write. And Chelsea. Chelsea Green, that was her name. So Chelsea is a gimmick. She has half her tights painted one way and half the other and pretends like she has multiple personalities badly. Her wrestling is not quite Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler level, but it's not very good, especially compared to the other 3 who are all pretty good wrestlers. Tessa and Madison in particular are very good. And Britt, it was good, but you could tell she had some talent. They said she hadn't been wrestling that long, which means
Definite potential.
Which means she has some pretty good potential.
She also came out to Adam Cole's music.
Oh, yes.
Someone using every aspect they have.
They said that she was Adam Cole's girlfriend. I don't know if that's true, but
I'll tell you that she got the attention of every person in that audience with that music. So
because Adam Cole is, of course, very, very well loved in the indie scene. But this was actually my favorite match to this point, believe it or not. I shouldn't say that. My favorite on the main card, not counting the Briscoes match.
True.
But of the main card matches, I think this was the best one up to this point. Tessa and Madison stood out, and Tessa was awesome in the match, just beating the absolute piss out of everybody.
There were a couple of times when you could tell that Britt Baker wasn't on the mark or wasn't sure what she was doing, and you could tell that the other 2 were trying to lead her through and teach her, and you could see the potential was there.
And whereas Chelsea, you could tell a couple of times where she botched it or was too slow, and they had to kind of just go roll with whatever they had left to do.
You could tell that she had that other part to her, that stupid gimmick to make up for the fact that she isn't a good wrestler, and I don't really think she has the potential to be one.
No.
That's my opinion.
I'm not going to make an opinion on that, but I can just say that she was well below the other 3 as far as her abilities.
Definitely.
In the end of the match, Tessa won with her hammerlock DDT, which is like a tribute to her father and the 4 Horsemen in general. Her father was actually out at ringside at the beginning of the match, which is a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, she had lots of family in the audience, and so it was kind of nice to see the bringing out the old guard.
She looks a whole lot like her father, too.
She wrestles like him, too.
Yeah.
Girl's badass. She was awesome.
Yeah. And they said she was recently crowned the Impact champion, so hopefully she'll do a lot more beatings and hand it out to everyone in the next few years.
It's nice to actually see them put a woman wrestler on there who is a wrestler and not just eye candy.
Yes. Yeah, I look at it this way, and maybe this is wrong, but I figure the eye candy should either be the jobbers for the women's division, or they should just be kept separate and they can
be managers,
titillate the crowd, or be managers.
Like they did with Stacy Keibler.
No, yeah, when she was managing the Dudleys.
Right.
Yeah, and then keep the real wrestlers and let them actually wrestle and show what women's wrestling can be.
And then you had managers in the old days like Sonny and Sherry. I mean, come on, those were great wrestlers.
Yeah, because they knew how to get some heat.
They were great managers. So
Sherry was okay as a wrestler, but Sonny didn't wrestle until many, many years later.
Yeah, I think she was a better manager.
Oh God, yes.
I thought she was awesome.
Yeah, she did a really good job as a manager.
Moving on.
So the next match was Magnus, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, versus Cody, and it was for the NWA title. Mm-hmm. The story behind the match was that Cody originally would be receiving the title shot if he was still the ROH World Champion by the time this, was it the IWGP? IWGP. So if he was the IWGP Champion when the show aired, he'd get it for free, a free title shot. But if he wasn't, then he wouldn't. But they altered the stipulation that he would put his Ring of Honor ring on the line, which is supposed to be worth a lot of money, which probably...
$10,000.
Yeah, it's just the best way they could get into this match. So, for anyone who's been living under a rock or doesn't watch wrestling, Cody's father, Dusty Rhodes, was a very famous NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and the title used to mean a whole lot back when it was part of WCW and the years before that when the territories actually existed. Well, thank you, Virus Protection, for popping up while I'm talking and distracting me. But so this was, they said it was almost to the 39 years to the day that the Dream first won the NWA Championship. So this was a big deal to Cody, and you could tell because he came out trying not to cry. And he brought out his, I guess it's his dog, which was half wolf. And
Beautiful white dog.
I was staring at the dog.
He's beautiful.
I know a lot of the people in the crowd were probably staring at Brandy, who was wearing practically nothing, but I was looking at the dog. Yes, you know where our priorities are. Pretty white doggy.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, the match, I wanted to say one thing before we started talking about the match, was that Cody got a huge pop.
He did, more than I've ever heard
Yeah,
before.
by far more. The crowd was very appreciative that he'd organized all this and was just happy to be there and support everything he'd done.
You didn't tell who was with him, besides the dog.
Oh, yeah. Talk about who came out with Magnus and Cody.
Well, he came out with Diamond Page.
Diamond Dallas Page. Yeah, DDP.
And then he also had Tommy Dreamer with him, which is who he handed the dog off to, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and then Jeff Jarrett accompanied Magnus out.
Yeah, he looked like hell.
He did. He's not looking good, so hopefully he can get his life together because he looks rough compared to the last time I saw him, and it wasn't that long ago that we both saw him.
It wasn't that long ago. He looked a lot older.
Yes.
Worn.
Yeah.
Rode hard, put away wet.
There's a reason why. That might be part of the reason why the TNA cut ties with him, even though I guess they're not TNA anymore, but they call them Impact Wrestling now. They went to TNA to Impact Wrestling to Global Force Wrestling back to Impact Wrestling, so good luck keeping up with that. Next week they might be Global Force Impact Wrestling TNA. Who knows?
Who knows?
Someone else can try to figure that mess out. But at least they don't have Dixie Carter running things anymore.
Oh man, she's a piece of crap.
Well, she finished burying whatever what was left of what Jarrett gave. It took her a while,
Yeah,
but she once her parents cut her off, that was the beginning of the end, I think. But the match itself wasn't anything that special. It was a decent match. You could tell that Cody had some problems with Magnus because Magnus is so much bigger, so he couldn't hit some of the moves he normally would on the smaller guys. But it wasn't anything too bad. And Magnus at one point, Cody's outside the ring. I'm babbling already. And Magnus comes out. Cody was off the apron. Magnus hits him with an elbow in midair. And they did like a fake injury angle where Cody bladed. And while he was out on the outside, DDP came in and gave a diamond cutter to Daivari. Which, of course, got a pop because everyone loves a diamond cutter. But then they went back to the rest of the match. I think this was the only blood on the show, wasn't it?
That's the only blood on the show.
Yeah, and you know, Dusty Rhodes is famous for bleeding in his matches, which is probably why they did it. And also to get sympathy on the babyface.
Exactly, man. Gotta have it.
But at the end of the match, Cody won the title with the leverage pin that, like, a la Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. That seems to be coming back in style lately. We've seen it on back-to-back shows.
Mm-hmm.
And Cody had a celebration in the ring before they faded out.
It was pretty emotional. I mean, you could tell the guy was very hurt in many ways. You could tell he was grieving for his father. I think that's a big part of why he won. It's I won't say a sympathy gift, but I'll say
wrestling is full of things like that.
Right. They did it because he needed it.
Yeah, and you can call it that, but not mean it necessarily in a bad thing.
No,
there's nothing
not a
wrong.
Bad thing.
Wrestling is made to play on your sympathy, and when it does that, that's a good thing. Now, you can also play on your hatred. Speaking of hate, that is a great segue into the next match, which is Adam Page versus Joey Janela in a street fight. So, a Chicago street fight. Mm-hmm. The only difference being is that this match was in Chicago, so therefore it's a Chicago street fight. I have no idea who Joey Janela is. He did not impress me in this match. And Adam Page, who normally I would say is an average wrestler, I'd have to say in this match was not good. And that's being generous, because we're going to bury him utterly. But before we even got to the match, we had a wonderful Joey Ryan versus Adam Page segment, which Adam Page supposedly beat Joey Ryan to death with a phone, which would only be considered as a public service for professional wrestling as a whole. So, God. Joey Ryan is an atrocity. He's a wrestler who flips people with his dick.
Okay.
Because that's the only claim to fame he has in the industry is his dick. His whole personality is based around this. Whatever you can, if you can consider that a personality. What do you think about Joey Ryan? I know you were burying him last night, so get out your hatred.
I think he's not a very talented man to begin with. He looks like a porn star with the goofy-looking mustache. Maybe, like Super Mario mustache? I don't know what you would call it.
Mario would be generous. More like scrubbing your toilet with your face mustache.
Oh, Brillo pad.
Brillo would be it's insulting to Brillo pads.
No, he's not talented as a wrestler. His biggest claim to fame is the dick shot part that he did in that one wrestling match.
He calls it the penis plex, but
yeah,
it's just so dumb.
I
mean, when you try to put that in the middle of a card of serious wrestling, it stands out even more awfully than it normally would. If you went to see a comedy show, maybe I wouldn't flip a wit at it, but my God, this in the middle of what had been a pretty great show to this point, and he didn't come out until after the match, but the match itself was bad enough, and then we adding Joey Ryan to the end of this match was like taking a shit on top of a pile of puke. So let's talk about the match. So the match was extremely slow in most parts, where they were setting up different things like tables and chairs. And in between those slow parts, they would do incredibly stupid things in some kind of determination to kill themselves or each other. And then, like for instance, I'll give an example. The part that you were like, what was going on, which was where so Joey hits Paige with I think it was a forearm, and Paige jumps over the barrel that they've been using, and then jumps over the security railing, and then he does what would you call it? A stinton, a clothesline off the railing, when he could have just stepped back over it or not jumped over to begin with. It looks so terrible.
What they meant to do was for him to fall over and then go over the rail.
Yeah.
But I mean, he went head first and he knew exactly what he was doing. It was so obvious.
Yes.
It's like, come on, y'all.
I want you to repeat what you said about the next part of the match, what you wrote down.
Oh, you talking about the chick?
Yes.
Oh, God.
So after Paige had beaten up on Joey, he then got beat up by Joey's manager. So
Lord.
Repeat what you said.
Oh, let's see. Prostitute brings his talking boots into the ring. He freaks out. She super kicks him. She's a better wrestler than them put together.
Apparently.
Mm-hmm. Super kicks him, hits him with one of his boots, and basically whoops his ass. She beats the crap out of him. Yeah,
so this small 110, 120 pound woman, whatever, beats up a 230 pound man with basically no recourse until much later, after she'd already beaten him senseless. Mm-hmm. Almost as ridiculous as the penis plex, but still really stupid. And it made Paige look hilariously weak, and Joey even more pathetic, which is okay if you're the heel, but it just was dumb. This match was horrible. I wrote, my next writing is, why God, why? Why would this, and it just keeps going. The match finally, mercifully ended with one of the most dangerous spots I can remember seeing, when Adam Page hit his rite of passage, which is a reverse pile driver, off the top of a ladder through a table. It is a miracle that no one died. And then I put Page wins worst match of 2018. Because I honestly can't remember a worse match of recent memory than this. And even the next match, which was awful, was nowhere near this atrocious as far as in-ring. I'm sure there are worse matches, I just haven't seen them. And I feel blessed for not having seen them. You have any more comments to add to this atrocity?
No.
Then let's move on. The next match, I'm sorry. Before we get to the next match, we get even more atrocity, which was the lights go out, and then 6 inflatable dicks walk to the ring. You may think I'm joking, but I am not. The dicks line up like they're druids waiting for the Undertaker, and out comes Joey Penisplex Ryan. Well, he has his porn star music, yes. Somewhere Jim Cornette is screaming. I was screaming for him. Ryan gets in the ring, lathers himself up, while Adam Page stands there like a complete moron. And then Ryan gives him a penis plex. The penises carry out Page like he was Daivari being sacrificed for the terrorist angle. And the segment, like the whole match, was dicks. Many, big, floppy dicks. So let's move on to the next match.
Okay.
So the next match, before we see Lethal about to come to the ring, and someone hands him Macho Man's glasses, and he starts freaking out like he's turning into Macho Man. So he becomes Black Machismo again. So we start out the match with Jay Lethal, the Ring of Honor champion, playing his comedy character Black Machismo versus Flip Gordon, and this is for the World Championship of Ring of Honor. And I'm going to say the same thing I said before, which is, on a comedy show, this might have been fine. But when it's your world champion acting like a complete geek, it just ruins the credibility of the title. So, during the match, Lethal would go in and out of being Machismo depending on who had put their hands on him. It didn't make much sense. He would pick up Brandy Rhodes, who was out there solely so that he could pretend she was Elizabeth. It was a pretty wretched match. Lots of flippy stuff from Gordon because his name is Flip, and that's all he does is flip around. He's supposed to be really fast and athletic, but Lethal was actually had to slow down to meet his spots. And then at the end, about midway through the match, Flip Gordon pretended that he was Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan. It was horrible. It was the thing you would expect to see in a bad comedy wrestling in a bar somewhere. Mm-hmm. And finally, mercifully, Lethal won with his lethal injection after hitting a cutter off the top rope. This match, were it on any other show, would have been the worst match of the show. But instead, it was just the second god-awful, horrible match in a row. Did I miss anything in burying this piece of garbage?
No. The only cool thing about it was
Lanny Poffo being out there.
That's it.
That would be Macho Man's brother, for anyone who doesn't know, the Genius. So he was out there for the Black Machismo thing, which was the only thing worthwhile in the whole match, but it was pretty stupid. So after the match, Bully Ray came out and attacked both of them, and only for Colt Cabana to come out and help the two wrestlers, and they all powerbombed it through a table. Colt Cabana, of course, come out because he's in Chicago, and he is from Chicago, so he got a big pop. He was also in the Battle Royal. A lot of people in the Battle Royal. I didn't want to go through everyone that was in it because it would just waste everyone's time. So the next match, which was the best match on the show,
I think so too,
was Kenny Omega, who's the IWGP champ, versus Pentagon Jr. It was not a title match.
Yeah, he didn't come out as Pentagon Jr. He came out as Penta El Zero.
Yeah, he did. He has different names depending on where he is. He goes by Pentagon Jr., Pentagon Dart, Penta El Zero, Pentagon El Cero Miedo. But his gimmick is always the same.
Yep. He's always good.
He's always a vile, evil, ruthless bastard who beats the hell out of people and is not afraid to be just as despicable and bloody and brutal as possible. So, of course, I love him.
Thrives on it.
Yes. So at the beginning of the match, it seemed like Omega wasn't really taking him that seriously. And because of that, he was getting thrashed. Pentagon was just beating him from pillar to post. And speaking of dangerous spots, about 2/3 of the way through the spot, Pentagon Jr. hit a package pile driver on Omega on the apron. This is very similar to the spot where Michael Bennett nearly paralyzed BJ Whitmer several years ago in Ring of Honor. I would like to say one thing. It was a really cool looking spot, but Omega and any other wrestlers, please never do this.
It's scary.
It could kill you or paralyze you. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to do that when there's a lot of other things you could do that will not potentially kill you or paralyze you. But I will say it was a great match. And in the end, Omega won with the one-winged angel. That was his 5th attempt at it because Pentagon kept countering it.
I'm not an Omega fan, but he was really good in this one. They played well off each other. They pulled out all the stops to make it a really good match and enjoyable for the audience.
Yes.
So, and then, of course, the fun part.
Oh, yes. Right after Omega won, the lights went out. Pentagon supposedly got up and hit a code breaker on Omega, pulled off the mask to realize it was Jericho in disguise, and then he hit a second code breaker and taunted Omega and challenged him to a match on the Jericho Cruise. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Jericho Cruise is a wrestling and rock and roll cruise that he invites wrestling fans on for, of course, a nominal fee. I think it's actually pretty expensive, but it's still a pretty cool idea.
It'd be pretty fun.
It's like the rock and wrestling of the 1980s in a modern form.
Ooh.
So very cool stuff, and he's going to wrestle Omega on the cruise. So the next match,
You didn't say anything about what he had on his shirt.
I don't remember. What did he have?
Yeah, his picture with Judas on the top.
Ah, okay.
Just classic Jericho shit.
Oh yeah, he's
taunt and mock and
absolutely
just poke you with a stick.
Yes, I totally slipped my mind, so I'm glad you picked up on that. The next match was also pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't write a whole lot about it because I was really tired, but I will say it was Marty Scurll versus Kazuchika Okada.
Love that man.
The man with the longest title reign in IWGP history recently lost the belt to Omega, and he did his best to make Scurll look like a star in this match.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, of course, Okada won with two Rainmakers in a row, but it was a really good match. It showed off that Scurll's ability in the ring, because he's actually a very good wrestler despite a really dumb gimmick with flapping his arms and screaming chicken wing and a lot of really bad comedy, although I will say that the little promo before the match was pretty funny, breaking fingers of people who were taunting him. But this match was pretty damn good, and on a lot of shows would have been the best match, but they followed but it was following an even better one. So
True.
But it was still really good. Okada had his Rainmaker gear back too.
Oh, man, he looked badass.
I love that gear. All the gold, the reds, the bright colors, and the crazy bling.
Oh gosh, yes.
It was beautiful.
He's a very, very talented wrestler, and you can tell how good a wrestler he is because he pulled a really exceptional match out of Marty, I think.
Marty's got a lot of talent. He's got a gimmick that annoys me immensely.
Well, and he doesn't usually wrestle with people that are at the level that can pull that kind of match out of him. In this case, he was wrestling with a very talented man.
Yes.
So that's all I'm going to say.
Then we have the main event, which is the Bucks and Kota Ibushi versus Rey Mysterio, Phoenix, and Bandido. I'm sorry, I just love that.
Bandido.
So, I would normally say in a match like this, typical Young Bucks match, but that's not quite true. This is more like if the Young Bucks wrestled a luchador Young Bucks. About 4 or 5 minutes in, you could hear the referees audibly telling the wrestlers, "Go home, go home." It's quite loud. Louder than John Cena's calling in the ring, which is very loud. So, apparently somebody in the earlier matches went too long. Maybe several people, I don't know. So what happened was they had to cut some of the match, so all the selling went out the window. And it was basically just an incredibly fast flurry of spots.
I feel like they've been put on fast forward.
Yes, it was amazing to watch. Normally, I would not enjoy this match quite as much, except for that the people that the Young Bucks were wrestling were every bit as athletic as they were. So it ended up just being an entertaining car wreck.
Yes.
It was total madness. The Bucks finally hit their Indie Taker, which is a spiked tombstone pile driver for the win. They picked the right opponents to have this kind of match because the Bucks are usually so athletic that the other people are the ones that are doing the slower spots. But in this case, both teams were insanely athletic, so it was just nonstop, high-flying spot after spot after spot after spot until the end. Which was fine for what it was. And the show overall left me mostly good things, despite those two hideous matches in the middle. were I to say if you skip those 2 matches, it would be my favorite show of the year. But because they were in there, I have to put it just on par with the G1 Climax show we watched. I would say it was a little better than the Slammiversary, and probably about the same as Dominion. What do you think?
I'd say I really enjoyed it in those 2 matches. Personally, this is when I would go out and buy and keep.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's enjoyable.
Actually,
you watch it again and again and still enjoy it.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Cool.
I would say that it's better to have it on DVD because then you can just skip those 2 matches.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's definitely a good point, which I hadn't thought about. So recommend you buy this one on DVD, keep it in your library, watch all but those 2 matches, and I will go to making a voodoo doll of Joey Ryan and poking it in the penis.
Just one other thing on the last match.
Yes.
If you buy it, you can slow it down and actually see what the hell they were doing.
Yeah, God knows you can.
My God,
It's hard to follow
fast. So fast.
And I mean that in a good way, not in a bad
it
way.
was great. It was a good match. Really good.
Just total madness.
Yeah, it was great.
So recommendation: buy the DVD. I'm watch it online if you can get it for a reasonable price. Good show, bogged down by a couple of stupid, goofy comedy matches, but mostly really good stuff. Mm-hmm. Congrats to all the wrestlers for selling out a 10,000 seat building, which nobody's done since the WCW days. And hopefully that means wrestling is on an uptick again.
They said it took half an hour. The final tally was 10,451 people. Pretty good.
Biggest non-WWE event since the 90s.
Which is pretty cool. It's nice to see that they're able to pull that together quickly and pull off a really good show.
Yep, and the boys did it, and they did a real good job. So I'll leave it at that. Hope everybody had a good time, and I'll see you for the next wrestling show where we'll praise the good things and bury all the garbage. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good evening.